Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started, everybody. Welcome. It is 2:30 on April 15th, 2014. We're at the 41st CALLERLAB convention in Sparks, Nevada. This session is called Appealing to a Younger Crowd. And my name is Mike Hogan. I'm the moderator, and I have some ideas that I'm going to share with you. And I'd like to also introduce you to our panelist. This young man began calling 8 years before 2014, which we decided which was 2006. Yeah. You're welcome. I set him up earlier. He's a recent graduate of the University of Memphis. Congratulations. Very nice. He has 3 groups at home. His home is Memphis, Tennessee. And he has a mainstream group, a plus group, and an A2 group. And he also wanted you to know that he teaches at least one set of beginner lessons every year. And he's, for calling for 8 years, he's doing exceptionally well. I know he's called in something like 20, 25 states around the country already. So he's doing extremely well and records on Royal Records. So please welcome Justin Russell. We flipped a coin. I lost. I get to go first. Hang on. The difference between Justin, big difference between Justin and I is for the tape, Justin doesn't need readers to read what he wrote. So I'm Mike Hogan. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. And I've been in marketing for the better part of my professional career, working primarily in radio, but in the companies that I work for also own television. Every media company does lots of internet things. So when I got to thinking about this, to be honest with you, a lot of what I wrote is truly Mike Hogan opinion. Now, it's got a base because I work with a lot of businesses in my real job all the time who have lots of different demographic targets. And when we talk about different age groups have different lifestyles. They consume media in a lot of different ways. My spin is, if we're trying to be appealing to a younger audience, I talked about a couple of different things. Appealing could be our product. Appealing could also be how do we reach these people. So I put a little marketing stuff in it. But so here's kind of where I went with it. Whoever you're trying to attract to square dancing, what we know for sure is that the product has to fit their lifestyle and it has to satisfy a need or a want. That's the case with anybody that sells any product or any service. It has to satisfy a need or a want. Then they must find the product attractive, engaging, captivating, and desirable. When it comes to fit, a couple of things that are, most of the times you have to talk in general terms because there are always exceptions to the rule. And an exception to the rule, for example, is the fact that Justin Russell, who is 25 years old, calls square dances. Would you not say that's an exception to the rule? Because typically he would not, most folks that are his age don't want to spend the bulk of their non-working time hanging out with their parents' age or even their grandparents' age. Right? That is the case. And we know that. So when we think about a good fit for the activity and we want to bring people into square dancing that are of what we call a younger audience, what is that younger audience? So I kind of broke it into different 10-year cells. So there are lots of things, many features about our activity that you have to consider. Where do we meet? When do we meet? How often? How long is the get-together? Who's going to be there? What do they get out of it? Is there a dress code? Who will I be socializing with? Okay, I know this age differential stuff from the way that we program radio stations. Humans want to interact socially with their own peer group. generally we have a limit in the social activities to age differentials. We have sort of our comfort zone, and I have two examples that I want to tell you about. When I did my last set of beginner classes, we did a beginner night, just an opening night, introduction, get as many people in, don't have to sign up for the class, etc. Got a lady that works at the radio station where I work to come to it, and she came and she had a really good time, and she went back, and then I was talking to her during the week, and she said she was trying to get a bunch of her friends to come the next week. Which she was unsuccessful in doing that, and so she said she wasn't going to take the class. And I said, well, didn't you have a good time? She said, I loved it. It was cool. It wasn't what I thought it was. I enjoyed the motions, and I liked the music. But I'm not going to dance with all those old people. That is a pure quote. Now, it wasn't meant mean. She loves those folks. They're her parents. Well, actually, they weren't all her parents' age. But, I'm used to interacting socially all the time with 70-year-olds. It's because it's what I do, right? And it's what you do. But in the normal world, they don't. So what I want you to know is this young lady that couldn't get enough of her own peer group to come take the class for her to feel like she fit in is 58. So she's not that far from the age group of many of the people that were there, but she's far enough that didn't fit for her. Another quick story. My very best friend does not square dance anymore. He started square dancing at 6 years old, met his wife like I met my wife. We were, best men and maid of honors, and the wives were maid of honors in the weddings 28 years ago, and yada, 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 right? Well, not only does he not square dance anymore, he quit because they had 4 children and got real busy. But today, even though he's my best friend, he gives me a lot of grief because all of my Facebook friends are old. And he won't, and he loved square dancing, and his wife wants to get back into it, and he refuses to do it because the generational gap is too much for him. It's true. So that doesn't make our current average age dancer, doesn't make them bad, any of that kind of stuff. It does really make it difficult for them to recruit younger audiences because other than you parents making your children take lessons, that worked when I was 13, by the way. That's how I got into it. It's not going to be easy for you to go out and get 50-year-olds if you are 70. That's not your peer group. That's not your social circle outside of square dancing. So I just sort of put a chart together of age differentials. A 15-year-old is typically going to interact with anybody from about 12 to about 25. 25 is kind of on the high end. And it just sort of varies a little bit. Usually if you get in the middle, it gets a little bit wider, but typically it's about a 10-year zone plus or minus your own age. Because once you get past that, you start to get into, people that were raised on completely different music, on completely different television shows and so forth. So then I did generational profiles. Okay. And you could do lots of research online and find out about baby boomers. You got the early baby boomers and the late baby boomers and the Gen X and the Gen Y and the millennials and all of those types of things. They all were raised in different social economic times, and so they think of things differently. The 60 to 70-year-old is semi-retired, does light physical activity, willing to join groups and make longer commitments. They're slower learners. They want exercise to help them stay healthy. They don't mind dancing in a church. They're okay with, but not excited about dancing in senior centers. And they're very family and church oriented. We don't need to change our product, or what we're doing right now, the music that we use, the locations that we dance. We don't need to change much of that, very little, to find it appealing, at least, to that 60 to 70-year-old dancer. There's probably other things that make it tough for us to get 60-year-olds involved in square dancing, but the product that we have itself is not a hindrance to us. The 50 to 60-year-old, 51. I'm 51. Anybody here 50 to 60 years old? Okay. Okay. Who's 60 to 70? Who's 70 plus? Okay. Perfect. So we got a lot of 60 to 70. Would you not agree that you're probably, even the 60 to 70-year-old, you're probably younger than the average at your club? You are. And I expected that here we would have a little bit younger a little bit younger age range. Okay, so again, they want to exercise, but we want to exercise to stay young. A lot of us are new, not me, but a lot of us are new grandparents. Those of you that raised your hand, how many of you have fairly young grandchildren? Quite a few of you, right? Okay. You're easily bored and impatient. So I better hurry up. You want to feel young, right? You'll dance in the church. You don't mind. I love this one. You don't mind senior citizen discounts, but you don't want to be considered a senior, right? Okay? So you don't want to be considered old. You might dance in a senior center, but you really don't want to. Let's talk about that. That's a feature of our product, where we dance. When, what night, how long, all those other things, what music, all those things are features of our product. Well, one big feature of our product is where we dance. We dance in senior centers because they're inexpensive. That's why we dance in senior centers. But if you want to appeal to a 55-year-old and you say we dance at the senior center, they're going to go, whoa, time out. I'm not a senior. I'm trying everything I can do right now to not be a senior other than dying, because I'm obviously don't want to do that, right? So they are not ready to consider themselves a senior. So as soon as you say we dance at the senior center, it's going to be a hurdle. It's going to be an objection that you're going to have to overcome. Not saying they won't, but it is an objection that you're going to have to overcome. Yes. Wait. I didn't tell you this when I started. You need to know this. This is recorded, so if you have a question or a comment, we want to know who you are, where you're from, and then give us your question or comment, okay?
Peggy Lee from Pikesville. We dance in a senior facility, but when we say where we dance, we say we dance in this facility because it's cheap.
Yeah.
So it's all in how you word it.
Yeah, you can overcome it.
I mean, you don't say it like you're dancing with the seniors. You're saying they are letting us use their facility.
Yep.
And we have a lot of people in Baltimore dancing in senior facilities. So it's how you word it, and if you're smart, you'll say it the right way. So that
here's the problem: if you're doing any kind of other than word of mouth marketing, if you're doing any other kind of word of mouth marketing, you can't put on your flyer, "We dance at the senior center," not because we're seniors, but because it was inexpensive and they let us dance it. You can't do it that way. So you still have that same issue that you're going to have to, at some point, overcome. So what we're trying to do is make it more appealing. It's going to be more appealing if you're dancing somewhere other than the senior center. There's a group, Sioux City, Iowa is an area that's really struggling. But they had for years, they danced in a hall because it was cheap. And they called it the Bunker. Now, when you imagine the Bunker, I don't think of the Bunker as really an appealing name for a place. Well, the Bunker was actually the basement of the waste management building. Yeah. Do you think they had trouble getting people to go, ooh, I want to go there? So 40 to 50-year-olds. Okay, now we're talking working full-time, middle school and high school age children at home, very active, very busy, socially connected. They don't like long-term commitments and are not joiners. They take care of children and parents. Some of you are probably still in that generation where you may be taking care of children, or maybe you're empty nesters, but I'm finding out because I'm a very recent empty nester, but I understand that you still take care of them even though they're out of the house, right? So you're taking care of your children, and you're probably taking care of your parents, so they're real busy with that. They tend to belong to a gym, an athletic club of some kind, because they're trying to stay young again. They like trends but don't have to be trendy. They embrace technology, have laptops, smartphones, iPads. They're on Facebook. They text message friends and family. So, again, what do we need? How does the product fit? How do you reach these people? Okay, 30 to 40-year-old, all extremely busy. They're very physically active and love to be trendy. So if it's not a trend, they're going to go to a new trend. They work full-time and have young children at home. They like trying new things, but they need childcare. So is childcare going to be an issue if we wanted to go after 30 to 40-year-olds? Because what are they going to do with those young children? They're going to get a babysitter every time we have a dance? Maybe they are. But the fact is they need childcare or they can't participate in our activity. They won't dance with grandma and grandpa. They're very socially connected through the internet. They prefer to dance in church, in a club, at a gym, in a ballroom, or maybe at a community college. They want a nice place to dance. They want it to be, we're going to this really cool dance hall. That's where they would really like to be. So the church basement will work, but it's not their first choice. They text message, email, Facebook, etc. Okay, 20 to 30-year-olds. I could tell you very little about 20 to 30-year-olds if I didn't have a 20 and a 23-year-old. They're young, active, in school. Many of those are finish their bachelor's and are working on their master's part-time online, doing these kinds of things. So they're in school, they're getting married, starting their careers. They're working a variety of shifts. So a lot of those people are hospitals and various places, so they're working overnights and their shifts change. They're mobile, they learn fast, they retain what they learn, so you can teach them quickly. They like to try lots of new things, and they're very trendy. They're competitive. Is competition dancing, some element of competition in square dancing, appealing to them? I see us having competition at state conventions and state festivals and that kind of stuff all the time, when 10 years ago we wouldn't think. We'd go, oh no, we don't compete. But apparently we do, and apparently a lot of people like it. I think this generation would like some of that mixed in. They would dance in a church, but prefer venues that have a festive atmosphere, and often that could include alcohol. Maybe that's a product issue that we're not willing to bend on. But maybe the answer to that is do your classes a little bit early and make part of the evening a plan to go to a restaurant afterwards where you can pull the tables together and eat a pizza and drink beer if you want. That whole social aspect is really important to them, and they're night owls. They will finish a dance at 11 o'clock and go to the pizza place on the corner and socialize until they start putting the chairs on the tables. As they did when I started calling at 13 years old. That's what my parents' age would do. Huge tech users, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Huge into tech. They tweet. They do all this stuff, right? I wanted to use music preferences for those of us in the room that are involved in any way, shape, and form in production of music. This is Omaha, but I could pull ratings of radio stations in any market and give you the most popular formats of music by age demographic. That's what I do, part of what I do every day in my real world. So if you take each one of those age groups, and I'll just go down the middle and use 41 to 50-year-olds. So that 10-year age group, the most popular format, at least in Omaha, and this is Omaha's market 75. It's in the country. It's a real good representative of normal music consumption. Their most popular format of 40 to 50-year-olds is modern country, a blend of Jason Aldean and Taylor Swift is a little edgy even in this group. Dierks Bentley, that's big. Florida Georgia Line is big. A little bit. They tend to be a little bit younger. I could get into very specific groups, but you get where I'm at. Now they'll still dance to George, or they still like George Strait. I mean, I'm sorry, George Strait releases a song. He's 60 years old and he's retiring from traveling, and it goes #1. They still like him. He still fits in that modern country. The next one that they like is what we call classic hits. This is like pop music from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. that's a big format with those people. They are rockers. You know, the 70s was the age of the hair bands, AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and all of that kind of stuff. There's a big bunch of those folks that like that format of music, and then they like, after that they like, oh, I screwed that up. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Pardon me. I didn't mean that for the tape. Apparently I didn't get that changed out. The next one is supposed to be classic rock, not rock AC. It's supposed to be classic rock, which is a little bit older, more 60s, 70s based rock music. And as you can imagine, as you go to the older group, they like more of classic country and classic rock and that type of stuff. The young group, from 40 and under, either CHR, which is today's top 40, or rhythmic or pop, adult contemporary, that's sort of where they like to be. So my point in terms of our product would be, if you're a music producer, you probably better be looking at some of this AC and CHR formatted music, which actually usually comes out in a very rhythmic form, so it transfers. I saw his hand. No, I'll grab him. Yeah, there's back here we need a microphone. At any rate, my point would be, as music producers, we need to be producing. The gentleman in the blue shirt. Hang on, Nick. Hang on. Let me finish my point, and I'll give you the floor. Okay. My point would be, we need to start using more of that kind of music if we want to appeal to that age group. We might not use it at our regular club because they don't like it necessarily, but in appealing to a younger age group, we have to continue to produce more of that kind of music. Yes, sir.
Okay. Nikusha, Merced, California. I just wanted to know what CHR was. That's all.
Oh, CHR is an abbreviation for contemporary hit radio, okay, which is going to be, you're welcome. Sorry, I did use a lot of radio term. CHR is, it's not a particular music genre that I'm in love with, but for example, Miley Cyrus is huge in that realm. Wrecking, yeah, the song "Wrecking Ball." There's some stuff. Yeah, when you think of Lady Gaga, okay, "Edge of Glory," which was put out on Ego, was a great song, and the dancers seem to love it. And then I tell them it's a Lady Gaga song, and they go, "Really?" Had no idea. So a lot of this stuff will transfer very well. But that's what CHR is. Was there another question? Someone else had their hand up? Same question. Okay. All right. Okay, so then in conclusion, for the 60 to 70-year-old, we don't need to change very much. We use the music they like. They'll join our clubs. They'll make longer commitments. They'll dance with our current generation of dancers because they're in that 10-year older than them buffer zone. If we talk to them, we should be emphasizing health benefits because they're trying to stay young. They love to travel, so involving travel opportunities is cool. They enjoy that whole social element of it. I would shorten class time and possibly add a second night each week to increase retention. How many of you have been in a market where they teach 2 nights a week? I've never taught 2 nights a week, so if any of you want to speak to it, I think that would be great. But it's my impression that people who may not learn as quickly also don't retain it as long. So a shorter window, if you teach every 3 days, that I know this from marketing. When you deliver messages to people, there's about typically a 5 to 7 day window when whatever it was that you said to them is completely gone. So if you teach them something and 7 days later you expect them to really understand it, we all know we have to start our first tip at class and review everything we did the previous week. You probably have to do that with any group. But if you taught every 3 or 4 days apart, there'd be much less time spent on reviewing because they'll still retain it. That's my opinion, and I just know that from delivering messages to people, but I haven't actually got real-world experience. So if anybody wants to speak to that, that'd be great.
Glenn Reha, Olympia, Washington. We've taught twice a week for almost 5 years now. And the big grab of that, you're right about the 3 day, 6 day, but if you miss a night, you're missing twice as much time versus.
If you miss a week on a week's vacation,
it
you
gets
miss
real
2 nights.
crazy real quick.
So there's a negative element to it as well then.
And the age thing is really critical with regard to retention, is what I find.
Okay.
That it really, as you get older people, the shorter time frame in between, the better off they are.
Much better. That's what I thought. Mike Sikorsky behind you there has his hand up.
Mike Sikorsky, Mesa, Arizona. I, too, have radio experience, although not nearly what you do, Mike. This is an excellent breakdown, especially if you're talking about advertising and how you would approach advertising for a beginner's class. Mm-hmm. I also would submit to you that a lot of this goes right into a melting pot where they're all having a good time. If you start your dance with the Rednecks version of Cotton Eye Joe, and then your next hoedown is a Kiss soundtrack, and you go from there, and then you do Pretty Woman as a singing call. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter whether it's 15 or 105. I had a new piece of music, and I wanted my mother-in-law to listen to it on the car while we picked her up and we were going to the dance I was going to call, and I played it. And her first comment, this woman is in her elder 80s, and she says, "I like the beat."
Yep. Like the beat.
You know what I'm saying? This is the melding pot we have is square dancing, because this is really the only entertainment form that's truly interactive. These people are paying to be part of the show.
I think that's a great point. I do know that once we get them into class, we get them through class, for the most part, they're consumers of lots of different kinds of music. They love good music, and in square dancing they're going to love just about any kind of music that we use, as long as it's got a great dance beat. But I would mix it up. I'd use a lot of different ages of music. But when it comes to appealing to someone who doesn't dance, that's 30 years old, believe me, if they know anything about square dancing, it's not completely accurate. It's an idea of what old square dancing 50s, 60s was. Something that we have to have an effect on somehow to change. So if you want to attract that 30-year-old as an example, somehow we got to get to them the idea that we actually dance to modern music that they hear every day on their radio station, that they're comfortable with.
Brett Kappenman, Renton, Washington. I think one of the things that I've noticed, at least, is with the clubs that dance in our area in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm sure it's this way around the rest of the country, these age brackets these clubs have just moved up, and these ages, they've just gotten older. And nothing personal or anything, but I mean, they've collectively grown older together, but yet we're still expect for the younger crowd to jump back into these clubs where, again, everybody in this room is the youngest in the older club.
Correct.
I'm looking around the room here. Thank goodness Justin's here, because I'm one of the youngest guys in the room. Now you're the youngest guy in the room, and we're not recruiting young callers either.
No. One of the things, if we want to, when I was thinking about this session, I was thinking about starting it by separating you into age groups. When we talk about how people want to be able to associate themselves with, fit with the people that they're dancing with as they're walking through the door, like the 58-year-old woman in Omaha who wouldn't take lessons even though she loved it because she couldn't get enough people her age to participate with her. Okay? If I took 25, 51. Okay? Father, son. Yeah, right? So if I took a 30-year-old who walked through the door, first impression, do you think they would rather learn square dancing from me or from Justin? Right. If I took a 50-year-old who walked through the door, do you think they would rather learn from me or from Justin? Thanks, Claudia. You pay her afterwards, okay? So if we want to attract younger audiences, guess what we need to attract? Younger callers. Big time. And we can't attract younger callers unless we have younger audiences, because callers come from dancers. It's a tough cycle. Jim?
One problem with what you just said is that we don't have the choice.
We don't.
If we get a club that brings some people in, we don't give them a choice of which caller they want to do. So what would helpful would be if the caller we have would be trained and would be capable of calling in the way Justin would, if that's what we need. The age isn't necessarily obvious; it's what they do, and so we may have a question here of training the callers to deal with the situation, because we're not giving the audience and the new dancers a choice of, well, do you want to dance with the older couple, or the older caller, or the younger caller?
And that is something that CALLERLAB specifically has to take charge of. We have to be responsible for that. Part of why, like a seminar like this is going on. I'm telling you right now, how many of you in the room are callers? Gee, imagine that, a large majority of you. That's good. Not as much as in some of the other halls, by the way. These kinds of presentations attract a lot of the partners and dancers from other organizations that are here as guests and so forth, because it's not as much about calling as it is about the activity in general. But I'm telling you, as callers, you have to decide if you want to attract younger audiences. You have to go, okay, I may not love some of that music that's going on, that's being produced now, but I have to give it a try. I've got to be open-minded to try to use some new music. You got to know that if all you're doing are the singing calls that came out in the 70s and you want to attract younger dancers, you're not going to get it done very well with the music that you're using now. Okay, let me blast through this here, and then I want to make sure that that we're on a great line, but I want to make sure that Justin gets time to talk about his stuff. Okay, so some of the things that I'm talking about, I'm not going to read every paragraph, but if you have the document because you're in here, I would appreciate if you give it a once-over when you have time. If you got the tape, for the tape, there are differences that you have to make with each of these groups. I want to go down to the 20 to 30-year-old because it's the farthest swing, okay? Major changes are needed with our product with this group. Use a lot of non-traditional and new music. Just like with the 30 to 40-year-olds, they want that as well. Okay? I suggest that we either eliminate the dress code or completely change it somehow, because they don't want to. They will, once they're in it, they might go out and buy some square dance clothes. But I think that needs to be gone from our thinking with this group. Don't even think about dancing in a senior center. College campuses are a great place to dance. They're right at home there. That's where they live. That's where they've lived for 5, 6, 8 years of their lives, right there on a college campus. So are decorated ballrooms, really nice, fun places to dance. You could offer drop-in classes to allow them to be more flexible because they are so time-crunched, right? Teach them quickly and to keep them from getting bored. My daughter, this is even younger, my daughter at 8 years old, came and took lessons from me. And the third night she says, "Dad, why do we keep doing the same call over and over and over again?" Right? My son, when he turned 8, was just as intimidated as can be for taking class from me because I had 5 squares of grandmas and grandpas. And Dad was the teacher. And he lost it. So we took him home, and we got with some of our friends, including my best friend that I told you about, and they got all of their children together in my basement. I taught them mainstream in 9 nights, and it took me 2 nights to figure out how fast they could learn. And they had it, and they could dance better than many of the dancers on my normal dance floor. Understand that these people learn quickly, but they're very busy, so if they can pop in and pop out and do 1-hour classes, that kind of thing, they would love it. They like to be seen. These people like to be seen. They're active. They're out in the public. So you know what? Do some dances in the public. They'd love that. They'd think that would be a blast. They're spur of the moment. They're quick to organize groups. So like flash mobs, they would think that's cool to just show up and do something, like that. I think a lot of us think that might be a lot of fun. Marketing to them is all about social media and internet. Okay, websites with lots of updates, photos, videos posted from recent dancers, and videos of young people dancing, not videos of grandma dancing. Won't work. Got to be young people. Okay. The latest, as you said, the latest singing call to Bruno Mars music. That they want their stuff. Facebook posts, tweets, tweet upcoming dances. Allow them to post their favorite photos and videos. Allow them to get involved with the social media side. They will. And they will need a club whose demographic closely matches theirs. There's an overlying point in here that I've had several other callers say to me over the last 2 or 3 months as we've had some really good interchanges. There's a strong belief out there that the way that we get a group of, and my 58-year-old coworker is a perfect example. I know that if I had, instead of doing my class sponsored by my club, whose average age is 70 years old, if I did a private class for them on a night that would work for them, and I had them recruit their own people, and I left my current square dance group out of the picture for a while, so they all showed up, and I had 3 squares, 4 squares of dancers between the age of, say, 45 and 60, they would fit in perfectly and would love it. But the only way to get that accomplished, honestly, a huge way to get that accomplished is to, in a roundabout way, discriminate against your current dance group and start a new club. Start a brand new club that you specifically are targeting a younger age group. Oh, I know you'd get some issues, but I'm not talking about how my current dancer population thinks or feels or wants about this. I'm talking about how are you going to get young people. You want to get young people, you got to get a big group, and they got to feel like they fit in. And it might mean that you have to start a whole new club without inviting your current dance population to come in and angel. It may mean that. A couple more comments, and then I want to make sure Justin gets on the mic.
Chris Day, Manchester, England.
Hi, Chris.
My children, we've been calling 35 years. My children wanted to dance. They were, probably my daughter was 11. And the attitude of the dancers was, I'm not dancing with my grandchildren or grandchildren's age. So they had to learn somewhere else. And both my children had to graduate somewhere else before the club would accept them. My daughter went on a 10-day holiday, square dance, and she'd done the whole lot that people had started in September. That was the Easter. And then they accepted. But before that, they wouldn't wear the gear. It was jeans and brightly coloured T-shirt. We're not wearing square dance stuff at all.
I see.
Yeah,
so
and that's going back 20 years
backing up my point.
Ago.
They'll accept different music and they'll accept some dress codes and
They're
things
quite
once
happy to
they're
accept the
in.
music,
but appealing to them beforehand is a different story. Thank you for running the microphone around for us. Appreciate that.
Don Thompson of Paradise Way, Paradise, California. Couple things. You know what? The dress code thing, that's a minor issue. After, like he says, after it gets established, it'll gravitate. Some of them will gravitate toward it naturally. I've seen it.
Yep.
It's just some will, some won't. Okay? I've had people, real quickly, I've had one lady a few years ago, 40 to 50-year-old, joined her husband, who'd previous dancer, got into the class, got to the point where people were encouraging her to wear square dance clothes. She said, I'm not wearing funny clothes. She's gone. Okay, so it's not just the teenagers. I grew up in youth square dancing. My kids grew up in youth square dancing. I know it, like a few other people. I see it today as we're going to change or die. This is the way to the future. Because what's going to happen to all those advanced, challenged people? They're going to get younger and dance faster? No. So where's our future? Right here.
Very good. Guys, let me get Justin on the mic and let him talk about some of the things that he prepared. I know he's got a great presentation for you that has a little different of a approach. So again, Justin Russell.
Thanks, Mike. I'm kind of setting the timer for 20 minutes, and then that'll leave us time to kind of talk about some stuff. I'm going to run through. Pretty much, I typed this all up because more volume, voice. Thanks, Aaron. I typed all of this up because I had my tonsils taken out and I wasn't at work for a week, so I kind of just put everything that I've ever done in the last 8 years. When I first started calling, I had about 8 dancers, and I didn't know what to call, and we just kind of learned together. And a lot of these are all my good stuff, right? But in the meantime, we've tried a lot of things that just kind of fell by the wayside, that just didn't catch on. Actually, to what Trevor was saying, I start off by saying, like, have a clear idea of what your club wants, because it's kind of universal that we all want younger dancers in the activity, but that doesn't necessarily mean the club wants the younger dancers in their club. My Thursday night, it's a caller run club, and they love the kids, and we have a lot of fun with some of the younger dancers. My Saturday night is a plus group, and they tolerate them. Tolerate might be a little harsh, but they definitely, rather them dance in their own square, go out in the hall during the rounds. And so anyway, you would definitely want to have a clear idea with your club before you started implementing some of these ideas, to just make sure everybody's on the right track. Develop a good campaign. That's kind of why I brought some of my brochures and things, to kind of give you an idea of some of the stuff that we were doing. If you have an old logo, try to update the logo. I put Randy Stimson. He's a guy out of Charlotte, North Carolina. He does a lot of GSI's newsletters and their flyers. I think he's brilliant at some of the stuff that he can come up with. If your logo is 30, 40, 50 years old, maybe update it a little bit. It cost me $50. That was 7 years ago, so it might be more. But I stick it on everything that we print, and so it's definitely been worth it. So after you develop that good campaign, come up with some brochures. Anything that can stick, we put our logo on it. So here's a chip clip. This is actually a pretty good one because all of my friends have been to at least one of my dances. And I was actually at a friend's house a couple months ago, and they still had this on their refrigerator. They hadn't danced, in a couple of years. I use Vista Print a lot. I had magnets, but I did another session yesterday, and they took all my magnets. But magnets, these chip clips, flyers, postcards. The other thing we kind of did, this is from Vista Print, is gift certificates. And I actually worked it out with my dancers that if you want to give this to somebody and they don't show up, I'm not charging them for it. It's only if they show up. But I think it kind of guilts people into coming, maybe. But we've had some success with that. If you have a warm lead that you think might show up, we found another good way is a personal invitation, almost like a wedding invitation or a baby shower invitation. Again, I think it might just guilt them into coming more than just calling them up, but we've had good success with that. Some of the advertising that we've done, we have a Facebook page. I have my own personal page, and we also have Top Spinners is the name of my Thursday night club. That's the Caller Run Club. And so we have a Facebook page for the club, and we try to keep that updated as much as possible. Pictures are the best thing. Patty and I, we did a panel yesterday, and right before the panel we took a selfie, and we posted it up on our Facebook page. And so even people that I didn't know, they're friends with Patty, in North Carolina, they were commenting and they were posting on my picture. And that's the cool thing about Facebook, is that if you have pictures of people in your club, and they have Facebook, obviously, you can post. You can tag them in the picture. It'll go on their wall, and so you're kind of branching out your recruitment. Patrick kind of talked about that at the opening ceremony, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on that. I will say that if Facebook is what you're kind of using to promote, make it more of an awareness and not like a hard sell, because we've all had those people that like a Mary Kay, right? And they're like pounding on you to try to buy a product, and that's definitely not what you would want to do. Okay, I flipped to page 2. Homeschoolers, we've had a huge success with this in the Memphis area, and it's a really nice bridge between, we have a bunch of old people in the activity currently. That's kind of a true statement. We want younger people. My Thursday night is kind of a multi-generational club. I dance. My parents, they're divorced and remarried, and them and their spouse dances there. My grandmother, she still dances every once in a while, but she's our treasurer, so she's there every week. So it's like 3 generations. And there's a couple other families that are just like that. So I think a perfect bridge, if you didn't want to say, let's leave everybody else behind and go start a new group, it might be to spend time either with homeschoolers or at least a multi-generational club. Homeschoolers are very well connected. So once you kind of get in, they market to themselves in a fantastic way. What we did is every major city, they have a curriculum fair. So if you're a homeschool family, there's textbooks that you have to buy. And so they have these curriculum fairs where they have the vendors that came out. And we just did like a 30-minute segment. They have these long tables set out. And so you can pick up flyers for the basket weaving or, the scuba diving. And so we set up a flyer, and we ended up doing a dance just for the homeschoolers. And let me finish this one thought, and I'll get Mike, and then I'll get Brett. And so we ended up having a one-night party dance just for the homeschoolers. We had 4 squares there. Now, a lot of them, they were too young. Like, you wouldn't want to take them and put them in, like, a mainstream club. But it was really good awareness. We got 4 families out of it. And then from that, they kind of marketed the activity in their own groups. And so it worked really well for us.
How do you find these fairs?
Mm-hmm.
How do you find them?
I would Google. We had one homeschool family that was already in. If it was me, you're in Mesa, right? I would just Google Mesa homeschooling, and I guarantee you that there would be either a group or an email list, or they'll probably have a PDF of the flyer. That's what I would do. But the other thing is that there's newsletters that are just for the homeschoolers. In Memphis, there's a website that has all the different groups based on which part of town you live in. And so we also advertise that way, where we say, hey, if you're in Germantown, there's a Wednesday night group. If you're in Eads, which is where my Thursday night group is, we dance here. So we send out a flyer specifically to that group, too.
Brett Kaplan, Renton, Washington, and at least in some states, I believe even in Washington State, they can actually get like a PE credit or a performing arts credit for that. So that's yet another thing that they're looking out to, and just another tool that we can use to help give them what they're looking for.
In Tennessee, it was kind of hard to get the credit for it. You have to like submit it beforehand, and then you have to go back afterwards. It was a little difficult. I don't think anybody ended up getting the PE credit for it, but I know that some states are easier to get that credit. So we did homeschoolers a lot. Meetup.com, they kind of talked about that in the opening session. There's pros and cons to everything. One of the cons was we were getting a lot of people to come out to our first couple dances. And so I think I ended up just closing the group because you had to pay every month whether you were using it or not. The bad thing is our product, we only offer it once, twice a year, 3 times maybe. And so you're still having to pay the $15 a month even though you weren't really using the website. We had up to like 170, 180 people that liked our meetup. So anytime we set up and invited people, it would go to those 180 people. We would get about 20, maybe 30 that would show up. They would show up to the free lessons or the free open dances, but they wouldn't commit. And one of the problems with Meetup is the people that are on that site, they want to try everything. So this week they maybe want to learn salsa dancing, and next week they want to mountain bike and then wine tasting. And so it was really good at kind of promoting. They were also really good about they come out, they do the dance, they can go home and they can rate it. So we had a lot of 5 stars and a lot of good ratings about the people are nice and the caller was really easy to understand, but we still couldn't necessarily get that hump of actually becoming part of our club. But it was pretty good at the very beginning at kind of getting people to come out. Groupon, has anybody tried Groupon or Living Social? That was by far the best thing that we did with our group. I mean, it was probably the closest thing that we had of people knocking down the door to get in. I put all that information, so I won't go over all of it. If you didn't get a handout, I got some extras up here. We were trying to get 50 people to buy our Groupon. Does anybody not know what Groupon is? Okay, sorry. So if you go to Groupon.com, the idea is group coupons, and you can sign up in your area. And so I'm in Memphis, and so every day they'll send you an email, and it could either be a restaurant or a gym membership, but if enough people buy into it, you can get it at a discounted rate. Our thing that we did, it was 6 weeks. We were charging $30 for 6 weeks, so we had to slash that. We had to give them a deal, and that was part of the reason that they would buy into it. So for $15, you could come out for 6 weeks of dancing. From that, Groupon gets half of it, and then we got half of it. So for every one dancer, we were only making $7.50 off of it. And some people in the association, they thought that was crazy. My idea was if they danced for 6 weeks and they liked it, week 7, we're charging them full price, and they're bringing their friends. And so I thought it was still a great idea. I never could get that across to everybody, though. We were trying to get 50 people because of the hall that we had. We couldn't get any more than that. And we sold 43 of them. And of that 43, I put it in here, I think 30 came almost every night or every night. Very few people dropped out just because they didn't like it. The good thing was it was tailored to a younger audience because that's who's on Groupon, and a lot of them were married. Since then, we've done a couple other campaigns. Very few of them. Actually, I don't think anybody is still there from the first campaign, which we did a couple years ago. But they brought friends, and some of those are still around. So Groupon, Living Social, right now they're not as popular as they used to be, so you might not have the same results. But at the time, it was fantastic. And the cool thing is, after you use one of them, the other sites, they'll try to call you so that they can use you again. So I'll have Living Social call me, or Deal Busters, or Amazon. Amazon Local, I think, is a new one. But they all kind of do the same thing. So I definitely would look into that. And, of course, I put some more information about that whole experience. Newspaper articles, it's one of the free things that you can do. It's really time-consuming. But we're in the paper like every month. And so some of the things is Top Spinner's 30th anniversary. Square Dance Club recognizes birthday. Square Dancers join Heritage Day celebration. The biggest thing we did, I have it right here, is I don't know if you remember the tsunami that happened in the Philippines, and then the Square Dancers, they were trying to get together and kind of raise money. Well, I did the exact same thing that I always do, take a couple pictures and write 4 paragraphs and send it in. But for this time, for some reason, they gave us a really good write-up. And so it has a picture of them round dancing, and then that's me and my grandma up here. She's a treasurer, so she's holding the check. And anyway, it was a really good write-up, and it says, Club moved to help. Local dance club supports typhoon relief. And I write up all of these. Sometimes they say, well, we called the local paper to see if they'll come down. Don't waste your time. It doesn't matter. You can take the picture, and you can write up the article and submit it in. If you want ideas, you can go to google.com, and you can put in to receive keywords. So anytime there was a keyword on Square Dance article, I would get an email about it. And it would be all over the country. But I could look at those and I could see some of the bad things that were written and like, oh, I don't want to do that. I could see some of the good things that were written and I'd say, oh, I can include that in my next article. And there's one other thing I was going to show. Yeah, I lost that train of thought. Oh, no. You can you can put, and I can't remember the actual title that's on Google, but it's like Google News, it's Google something, but Google Alerts, that's what it is. And my Google Alert was Square Dance news articles. And so anytime, anywhere in the country, there was a Square Dance news article, I would get an email about it. And then I was reading that kind of for suggestions on what I could write in these articles, because you're sitting at the computer at 2 in the morning and you're like, how else can I say we had fun without saying it's fun? I'd also, this is a good thing, I think I have a really good website. Go and look at it and tell me what you think. Comment and link and check out our Top Spinners Facebook page. It's called Top Spinners Memphis. Like that and share that, because it gives us really good ratings on Facebook. So we got the newspaper articles, 3 or 4 paragraphs. If you take pictures, when you submit it to the newspapers, include those people's names. And so Memphis, we're right there on the border between Mississippi and Arkansas. So any of the big dances that we do, I try to take pictures of somebody in Arkansas and somebody in Mississippi, and then I tailor, when I send out that newspaper article, I tailor it to whoever I'm sending it to. And I'm still surprised. Every month, I'm not kidding, we end up in the paper. And they still publish it, so I'm still sending it. Keeping your club members engaged. About a year and a half ago, I started calling A2. And so I've taught an A2 class, and I have an A2 club. But to be honest, I don't really like A2 as much. During the breaks, they're debating, if this call is proper or improper, and can you call this from this position? That's not my favorite thing. I'd much rather have like beginners and or like mainstream dances. And so we do some theme dances. We did Dancing Through the Decades. I have a couple pictures. And so, we have people that are dressed up in the poodle skirts, and we have some people with the afros and the big glasses from the 70s. We have game night. One of the things that we did was the March Madness, the NCAA tournaments. And we dance on Thursday nights, which is when round 2 started. And we probably danced 2 tips, because the whole time we're updating our phones to see if someone's in overtime or who won. And my dad actually ended up winning the pool. We do some non-square dance events. So we have picnics and cookouts. My club when I first took over, we had like 10 members, and we never did anything together. I mean, we were like a family there, but then we would go home and we wouldn't do anything else. So the first thing we did was we had a Christmas party, and so we had the dinner, we played the Dirty Santa, and they had so much fun, and they said, well, we should do this more often. So immediately we did a spring cookout. And so since then, you just kind of have to get the ball rolling. So plan that first event. And I tell you what, I've been silly enough to just like come up with these ideas, and then sometimes they just catch on. Number 6 under the keeping the club members engaged, we did how are we doing on time? We did a Kiss a Pig contest. And again, I had no idea how this would go over. It was a fundraiser that we were doing for, we have a handy-capable club that dances at a adult daycare center. And so we were doing a fundraiser for them. I called a local petting zoo that had a pig. And anyway, each club in the area, they had one volunteer. And we had envelopes with their names on it. And at this dance, you could put money in anybody's envelope. Whoever had the most money had to kiss the pig, Johnny Cash. And and of course, like the funny thing about it was everybody's, oh, I ain't gonna kiss the pig. I'll put $100 in there to make sure he has to kiss it. I'm not gonna kiss it. And so I had the most money. I had to kiss the pig. And then the second place person, they were like $8 behind me. And they said, well, if anybody will put $8 in, I'll kiss the pig. And then third place, they were like, well, if someone will put in $10 now, I'll kiss the pig. Everybody ended up kissing the damn pig. It was the fun. Everybody ended up kissing the pig. And Sorry, guys. It was it was just so much fun, and everybody was like really energized, and we ended up raising a little bit under $1,000. I mean, it was crazy. And again, it's one of those, I didn't know how it would go over. We do email wrap-ups. I really like this one for class. In square dancing, we have like these unwritten rules, right? Like if you get in a square, you're not supposed to leave the square. There's my 20 minutes. You're not supposed to leave the square. And but unless you tell them about it, like they're not going to know. They're just beginners. And so I include in the weekly wrap-up some of these little tips. And sometimes, people stop dancing for whatever reason. I ask if they want to be taken off these like weekly emails, and they still like to get them. They want to know whose birthday. They want to see the pictures and the specials that we do. Book swaps. Again, another one of the stupid ideas. I was spring cleaning, and I had a bunch of books, and I didn't know whether to just give them away. And so we had where if you had extra books, bring your extra books, bring your DVDs and your CDs, and you can just trade them out. Whatever wasn't taken, I just took to the local Goodwill. But that one was really cool. The NCAA March Madness, we had a lot of guys doing that. The book swap, we had a lot of girls doing that. But it was crazy because they would, you like that author? I like that author. Have you read that book? Well, I'll bring you that book. And it was kind of cool to see. I mean, for weeks, people were still trading books even afterwards. That was another one of those, I just had an idea, and it was one of the better ones. Let's see. This is actually kind of important. So I used to be, when I graduated high school, I had this big idea that I was going to move out to Colorado and be a grown-up at 18, and until I ran out of money, and then I had to move back home. But while I was out in Denver, I was dancing with the Colorado Rocky Mountain Dancers. I don't know if, okay. And anyway, we would go to these dances, and we would hear these things that I have heard, for years. But if you were a new dancer, particularly a younger dancer, it just kind of came off as creepy. And so one of the things that we would hear is, this is the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Well, obviously, in this room, the average age is, we'll say 50. We'll say the average age is 50. And maybe...
What you're saying is I'm above average.
And so maybe, if a crowd of 50-year-olds, it might not seem anything inappropriate. But if you're a 16-year-old girl and there's a bunch of 70-year-olds, maybe that just doesn't come across, as appropriate. So I never teach yellow rock because I just think it's kind of creepy, a 70-year-old guy for the first time, hugging, a younger person. And so I just say be mindful of your dancers. Also, club atmosphere, and I promise I'll stop. And then I say there's two different situations. And one of them, it says, the class tonight, they're doing really good and only 10 more lessons, but that's when they'll really have fun. Of course, then you can sign up for the plus and the advanced levels. And you'll want to take round dance lessons on a separate night, too. And you can attend the festivals and our state convention. We used to have 1,000 people at these events, and now we're lucky just to get half of that. The next tip is going to be a club tip, but then we'll do one for you. And then tonight's our monthly meeting. You should join us and hear about our club. Elections will be soon. Do you want to be vice president? And that's, maybe that was kind of a stretch, right? But, those are some of the things that we hear in the activity. And so one of the things that I said that would kind of be better is, thanks for coming out to another night of our beginner series. Everyone's progressing along. You want to be encouraging. In the next few months, everybody's invited to our state convention. Imagine hundreds of dancers in one hall dancing tonight. That's still the same truth, but we just spun it differently. Next tip's going to be an everybody tip, and then we'll do one just for the experienced dancers. So we call them everybody tips because even if you've been dancing 100 years, you could still do the everybody tip. And that's when we get the beginners up. Don't forget we'll have a demo coming up, and we'll need volunteers. We can still have the new people participating, maybe not as vice president, but they can still come out and do the demos. Maybe they can host the demo or be in charge of it, of getting the people to volunteer. So we can still have them participating in the club, maybe not vice president right away, and start thinking about inviting the people out to the party nights. So that's kind of my little spiel. I know I missed a lot of it, but you can always email me. It looks like we got like 7 minutes to go. Any questions, conversations?
Aaron Byers, I swear this just occurred to me while you guys were talking. One of the things that we were talking about in an earlier session was the fact that we can't seem to convince existing dancers that we need to start raising our prices. Not only because we look cheap to be charging $5, $7, $10, but also because we can't afford decent dance venues. Well, if we start a brand new club for younger people, number one, they're going to want to dance in a nicer venue, and they're going to expect to pay higher prices. So we should be able to afford a nicer venue if we charge higher prices, and we don't have that stigma of dancers who've been around for years who think all of a sudden we've raised our prices too much.
One thing on that is that in my area in Memphis, it was $3 a person to dance, $3 a person, and I went to $5 on my my first my caller run club, my Thursday night, in the hopes of that they would instead of just being visitors, they would become members because you get a discount if you're a member. But as soon as I did, I didn't lose a single dancer, which everybody thought we would, and then every single club after it went to $5.
It's worth noting that this business of ours, this Square Dance business model, is one of the very few models out there where the people who are making all of the executive decisions are the customers. Our dancers are the ones who are running our clubs. Our dancers are the ones who are telling us how much they're going to charge. They're going to charge for our performances, to charge, for people to come and see our performances and be entertained. It's a bit like, okay, I'm 51. I've driven Buicks, which notoriously go to older folks, since I was a little younger than Justin over here. It would be like me going into my local Buick dealer if we had this same model, and even though they might want $40,000 for the new Buick Lucerne, because I'm the customer and I get to make the decisions, I can walk in and tell them I'm going to give him $10,000 for that, and that's what he's going to sell it to me for. That's what our dancers are doing. So there's an issue there where I don't want us to be the high price entertainment option. I don't want us to be that. I don't ever want us to be unaffordable. But the reality is a number higher than what we're getting right now is going to allow us to provide a better product. It will.
Arlene Kaspic from the Chicago area. I understand how your choice of music it certainly needs to change given demographics. I'm assuming that, dangerous thing, but I'm assuming that when you're calling to a younger group, partly because of the music and partly because of their energy, you're going to want to call at a more rapid rate. But are there other concerns about how you call to a younger group, like say in their 20s and 30s?
Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit about how to react to that as well.
Do I get a prize for something?
Yeah, if I went in, Brett, you've got some comments.
I can comment on that.
Okay.
I think
Brett,
at least
you
with
are
Brett Kappenman, Renton, Washington, at least with my teen group, at most adult clubs, not all the adult clubs. We talk about win in your face. With the teen clubs, it's win in your face all the way
time.
through until the very end. Very seldom do I have them stand there for 2 seconds to adjust because they've just got it. And we're talking about the music and everything else, and I still use some of the older stuff. I mean, I used Ozzy Osbourne, Crazy Train with the kids, and these are all current teenagers, not my age teenagers. So the music thing is part of it, but we can still pull that old stuff back, and they appreciate it, just like you said with your presentation here. The only other one comment, and this is kind of slightly off topic, is some of the things that I've heard both of you say, have the callers change what music they're using, but yet we don't want the older generation doesn't want to dance with the younger generation. The younger generation doesn't want to dance with the older generation. So we're kind of in a big conflict here, back and forth. We got to figure out what we're going to do.
You have to do both. I mean, I'm sure Justin would agree with me. Usually when I program a dance, I have a pretty good idea what I want to do, but I'll walk in, especially if it's a place that I haven't called for or haven't called for recently, I'll walk in and quickly try to judge the floor and figure out what I think they're going to want to hear, and it might mean that I take the Lady Gaga song out and put a George Strait song in. So you have to adjust for that, and you have to be able to kind of adjust for that on the fly. If I did walk in someplace and suddenly realize that the bulk of the dancers that I'm calling for are, say, 30 years old, I am going to pick up the tempo just a tiny bit. I'm going to fish very quickly to see what their comfort zone is in terms of degree of difficulty. Do they want quicker, or do they want more complicated, or do they want easier? What is it that they want? I don't get the chance to call to a lot of 30-year-olds to know exactly what they want, but I can tell you an example might be Tech Squares, which dances up in Massachusetts at MIT. Thank you, at MIT. Well, first of all, it's MIT, so these folks they're pretty smart, right? So they understand that. Now maybe that's but that's the only group that I can think of right now that's really closer to that age demographic. But I actually believe that group is going to enjoy a certain amount of expansion of the use of the calls. And I'm not here to encourage us to necessarily be difficult in the choreography that we're calling. But I think you better figure out, if you walk in and call to that type of a group, you better figure out fairly quickly what they want. I know they learn fast. I know they get bored quickly. So if you're not challenging them by presenting some new material or some different material, not necessarily difficult, but something different, I think my guess is that group is going to get bored. I wish I had enough of these younger dancers to call to that I could adequately answer your question. But I think that what you call is going to be a little different.
Probably two more, and then I think we're almost out of time.
Justin, Glenn Rayhoff from Olympia, Washington. First, I want to say I really appreciate your enthusiasm about the activity, and it makes an old guy like me know that there's still some opportunities for some guys to replace us. So good job. Approximately how many hours a week do you spend promoting, advertising, making square dancing better in your area per week do you spend on it?
It kind of depends on if I'm sleeping that night or not. I mean, because like usually if I'm up at midnight, I can't sleep. I'll do. I saw in my group a decline about 2 years ago. We were going from 10 dancers. We were up to like 6. We were debating on whether to move to a larger hall or not, and then it kind of started drying up. And some of the dancers that were dancing, they stopped. We weren't getting as many people in. And it finally occurred to me, the time that I got my full-time job is the time that it's kind of started slipping off because I wasn't doing as much time advertising. But it kind of just depends on the time. As we get closer to September and we do another one in January, I'd spend more time doing it. Mike?
Justin, I want your comments on something. I just did a dance in Oregon, and there were 2 young girls at the dance, in this 16 squares, whatever it was. And one of them was 15 years old, and she specifically asked me, do you have any square dance music using Queen?
Huh.
And they gave another name, and she's like, in the 80s. And I missed the 80s altogether because I was listening to Merle Haggard, But so please comment on that, because here we got a 15-year-old that's supposed to be into Lady Gaga and this stuff, and she wants to hear Queen.
I think we all try to generalize, and so we would think if we saw a 16-year-old, then she would have Miley Cyrus and Taylor Swift on her iPod. But you would be surprised. I like Willie Nelson. I'm going to a Dolly Parton concert in May. And so I like a huge range too. So I wouldn't try to like pigeonhole any group. And, everybody knows the Beatles. Everybody knows. And so I would just incorporate. The other thing I would say about music is do what feels right to you. And so don't think that I have to do a song that's completely out of your box just to appeal to somebody. Because I've been in the youth hall enough times to hear callers that come in with a record that they don't even know, but they think the teens will like it. And it just comes across wrong because they don't know it, they don't like it, we don't like it because they just feel uncomfortable. So I would definitely say, kind of stay in your box and do what feels right.
I can tell you from the music industry there that for quite a while, that 18 to 34 demo, which is a hard demo to reach, they're typically what would be their third favorite. It's changed a little bit the last couple of years because modern country has become very popish, and that's had a big impact. But for a long time, the third or fourth most popular demo with 18 to 34-year-olds was classic rock. Okay? So, and if you think about it, I have my son who's now 20, but when my son was like 14, 15 years old, he knew every single word to American Pie. Right? So they do like some of that music. It may not be their first choice. I think the ability for us to say that we do a lot of music, including a lot of stuff that you like today on the radio, and some of these cuts that we think you like. If you go to a high school baseball game and you listen to the music they play during the breaks, it's either modern country for the most part, or it's classic rock. So Queen does not surprise me that a 15-year-old would want to listen to something from Queen.
I think we're out of time because we ended at 3:45. It looks a couple minutes over. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you, guys. Good. Nice name for Justin.
I have some extra flyers. We have some extra flyers if you came in late. I have a couple extras flyers that are just old dances that I didn't want to throw away if you'd like to see some of those.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming to the session. Enjoy the rest of the convention.